hide your mamas, because Zach Wilson is yet again a starting quarterback here in the NFL. What a crazy game that was last night. But it's the 11th month anniversary of this channel, and I couldn't be more excited. Today we're here to close off a week one officially, from player of the weeks to my updated top 10 to even a question or a comment about every week one loser. We're doing a little bit of everything here on today's show. So if you like sports podcasts, this might be the channel for you. We're on the road to 1,000 subscribers, and we drop 4 videos a week. So if you enjoyed at any point, all we ask for is that you support us on the road to that milestone. But without further ado, this is the Anomaly Podcast. It's Owen. Let's start off with the week one player of the week. Alright, the first week one player of the week, the top player of the week, we're going to go with Tyreek Hill. Alright, we know this. I didn't want to go with the obvious answer, but it is Tyreek Hill. When you put up 11 receptions for 215 yards and 2 touchdowns, that alone gets you the player of the week. But his performance in week one was the third most receiving yards in a season opener in NFL history. Tyreek is single-handedly not only making the case that he's the best wide receiver in the game, but he's single-handedly trying to make the case that he should be the first ever wide receiver to win the MVP award. His speed is one thing, right? We know the speed that Tyreek Hill has, and you could say that's the only reason he's good on a football field. But just the gravity that this guy has on a football field is mind-blowing. And he's still having great game-breaking performances like this, despite being double, triple covered on a weekly basis. Tyreek is truly one of a kind, and he will take home my week one offensive player of the week award. But if we want to look at other candidates that I looked at for this position, Tua, we could say it's a co-player of the week with how dominant they both were. But I gave the edge to Tyreek because of the one interception that Tua had. So the one mistake he had kind of gave me the edge to give it to Tyreek Hill. I wanted to give it to Tua because it was, after all, his return to football. But I gave the edge to Tyreek Hill. Tua still had an amazing day, almost 500 passing yards and 3 touchdowns. Of course, a big win there over the Chargers. Brandon Ayuk, he was going to be the player of the week for week one. I had the graphic made and everything. But then Tyreek did what Tyreek does. So Brandon Ayuk, he was going to be the player of the week. But 8 receptions, 130 yards, and 2 touchdowns for Brandon Ayuk is still a pretty good outing. Puka Nacua, I know I said that name wrong. But rookie wide receiver for the Rams, 5th round receiver, I believe, 5th round draft pick. But 15 targets, 10 receptions, and 119 yards in your rookie debut is absolutely insane against a formidable defense there in Seattle. Calvin Ridley, you guys know I'm a big Calvin Ridley fan. I've been on this channel for a long time. 8 receptions, 100 plus yards, and 2 touchdowns in his return from gambling. I bet you didn't expect that outing from Calvin Ridley. But Calvin Ridley, he was another guy I considered in his return to football. But nonetheless, all 5 of these guys put up amazing efforts in week one. You can also argue a couple other guys. Maybe Breece Hall from last night. There's a couple guys you could argue, but these are the 5 I'm going to roll with. For the defensive player of the week, I'm going to cheat a little bit here, but I'm going to go with the entire Dallas Cowboys defense, and that is because they had a historic performance. They had 7 sacks, 2 interceptions, they allowed 0 points, which they are the only team in the NFL that could say they did that, and they are accountable for the Giants' largest shutout home loss in franchise history. I mean, this defense, just from the start to finish, they dominated that game. And this defense, again, looks like it has a chance to be a historical defense. And that is the reason I'm going to cheat here a little bit and give the entire Dallas Cowboy defense the Player of the Week award on the defensive side of the ball here for the channel. But some honorable mentions. I have actual players for you guys. Jesse Bates III in his Falcons debut. They signed him. Big contract. It was a big signing for Atlanta. He had 5 tackles, 2 picks, a forced fumble, and of course, a home opener win. Despite the embarrassing home loss, I threw TJ Watt on the honorable mentions list as he still had 3 sacks, 5 quarterback hits, 2 forced fumbles, and a fumble recovery. TJ Watt remains one of the best edge rushers, if not the best, in the NFL. And then Patrick Surtain, I threw him on the list as he remains, in my opinion, as the best cornerback in the game. As Davante Adams, we know he might be the best receiver for Las Vegas. but he ended the game with 6 receptions for 66 yards. So you're saying, how is Patrick Surtain that good of a corner if Davante Adams had a very good game? However, per Next Gen Stats, Patrick Surtain only allowed 2 receptions for 11 yards on 7 targets for maybe the best wide receiver in the game in Davante Adams. So Patrick Surtain, to me, again, remains as the best cornerback in the game, and he showed it there in week 1 as he's kind of also the reason Jakobi Meyers was targeted as much and had a really good game the way he did. But those are my awards for the week, and we move over to my updated top 10. Quickly, I want to show you guys my preseason top 10, and on the screen now you'll see the video where just 2 weeks ago, exactly 2 weeks ago, we released my final power rankings here for the season. So if you watched that video, you know my preseason top 10, but if you didn't, I'll give you it here, as my top 10 goes as follows going into the season about 2 weeks ago. I had Cincy, Philly, KC, San Francisco, and Miami in my top 5. My 6 through 10 was Jacksonville, Los Angeles, the Chargers, the Jets, the Lions, and the Bills at number 10. But you can argue for the Ravens, the Browns at number 10. I went with the Bills because I didn't want to get put through a table, in all honesty. But here we go. After week 1, 16 games are behind us, a lot of storylines, a lot of injuries, and now we're here after week 1. In my number 10, I'm going to be a homer. I'm going to be a homer because I don't know how much I'm going to be able to do this all season. Hopefully a lot. But I'm going to go with the Cleveland Browns. We were home in terrible conditions. It's really not easy to play in Cleveland right there by the lake, but we really dominated the Bengals. I know we've had their number over the last couple of years. Joe Burrow, he's 1-5 against us, or 1-4. Regardless, this defense came out and they made a statement. Now, sure, the offensive side of the ball, Nick Chubb did what Nick Chubb does, and he ran for 100 yards. But aside from that, we had a couple splash plays, a lot of missed opportunities down the field with Marquise Goodwin, but Watson overall looked dynamic. He looked like a quarterback we haven't had in years here in Cleveland. But the offense overall was just mediocre at best, I'd say. But the defense is what won us the game. The defense with Myles Garrett, Zadarius Smith, Jim Schwartz coming in as the new defensive coordinator. But it's just a different approach for the defensive side of the ball, and it's refreshing to see a defensive unit that can actually stop a pretty good offense. And, of course, we did it way better than I thought we could. The Browns are my number 10 team as the defensive unit made a statement, and I'm starting to be a believer here in the Browns, even though I'm a fan. My number 9 is the Los Angeles Chargers. They dropped 3 spots here, but again, let me explain. They lost maybe the game of the year in week 1 to the Miami Dolphins, and it's not that I've lost hope in the Chargers. It's just that other teams kind of played better in week 1. And the Chargers, unfortunately, they're 0-1. Other teams don't necessarily, they could say they're better than 0-1, right? But the Chargers still showed an amazing week offensively. Another reason why I have them down here at number 9, dropping 3 spots in my rankings, is because of their defense. Their defense was atrocious in week 1. And I know, it's not easy to guard Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill. Those guys are game-breaking players with game-breaking speed. It doesn't help that Mike McDaniel's an offensive guru, but that defense looked atrocious. To have Khalil Mack, to have Joey Bosa, Derwin James, you have the star power on that defense. Asante Samuel Jr. is a name I could throw out there. And you just couldn't stop. You couldn't stop anything, right? And the Dolphins really had their way. And the Chargers defense is single-handedly the reason we might have a co-tap player of the week for week 1. So that defense, they have a lot of things to figure out. But offensively, we knew the Chargers, they're going to be okay. My number 18, we have the Detroit Lions. They move up 1 spot here in my rankings. And I get it. Maybe I should have them higher. But they beat a team that was missing their second and third best players. Now, I get it. You beat the Chiefs, the reigning Super Bowl champions, the most dominant team over the last 5 years. However, I'll also say the Lions did show a lot of promise on both sides of the ball, especially in that secondary with C.J. Gardner-Johnson, Emmanuel Mosley, and others there. They showed a lot of promise in that secondary, right? And just overall on the defensive side of the ball, offensively, not too shabby as well, but they only moved up 1 spot because other teams looked better, and the Chiefs were, at the end of the day, even though it's not in, the Lions couldn't predict that, but Travis Kelce and Chris Jones were both not playing for these reigning Super Bowl champions, So that is why I moved them up, just not as high as other people would in their rankings. Lions, still very impressive in week 1. It's a crazy world that we live in if we can say the Lions and the Browns are both top 10 teams in the NFL in the same week. At number 7, though, I have another debut team to the list, the Dallas Cowboys. I just talked about them earlier. I mean, this is a defense that won 40-0 in week 1. They single-handedly outscored that Giants offense, right? They were doing everything. They were sacking the quarterback, getting to him, pressuring him, picking the quarterback off, forcing fumbles. They did everything. This defense, led by Dan Quinn, of course, former Super Bowl coach, it looks like it can be historical this season. Again, I don't want to overreact to just week 1, but when you have a defense led by Micah Parsons, then you have Stephon Gilmore, Trevon Diggs, and other pieces as well. This defense has the talent. They have the scheme and the coaching. This defense looks like it can single-handedly be the reason the Dallas Cowboys can compete for that NFC East division. They are at my number 7 spot, as I'm just not the biggest Dallas fan because I know, look, just like the Bills, they're going to be a very good regular season team. They might even win a playoff game, but that's it, right? They're not going to be good enough to get over the top and win at the highest level, and that's why I kind of left those teams off the list. However, the Cowboys did show a lot in week 1, and it's undeniable that they're a top 10 team here in the NFL in week 1. At number 6, we're going to go with the Jacksonville Jaguars. They stay put at number 6. They did what they had to do. They did their job. They went in, they played against Indy, right? In Indy. They beat Indy. I know I said that a bunch there, but, you know, they looked okay offensively, looked okay defensively, and they took care of a rookie quarterback in his debut. If anything, I want to say shout out to Anthony Richardson, as it's just crazy how much he looks like Cam Newton. A young Cam Newton and Anthony Richardson look eerily similar on the football field. And as a Gators fan, I'm hoping Anthony Richardson can be Cam Newton in his NFL career. But for Jacksonville, they took care of business, did exactly what they need to do. There's no reason they should change in my rankings. And I was higher on Jacksonville than a lot of people, just like a team here in my top 4. But at my number 5 spot, we do have some movement, as the Cincinnati Bengals, if you followed this channel at all from the last conference title game, the conference title round from last year until now, you've known that I've said Cincinnati was going to win this year's Super Bowl. I still believe that. Again, I don't want to overreact and change predictions after just week 1. However, they did look pretty bad. I mean, Joe Burrow signed a $275 million contract, then proceeded to throw for 80 yards and really just look abysmal offensively against the Browns unit that, you know, is kind of revamped. But Joe Burrow, he will be back. This team will be back, and they will look better than ever from here on out. And that might be the worst game we see from them all season, at least in my opinion. But with how they played in week 1 on the road, I can't move them any higher than number 5. And I don't really want to put them lower because I understand it's just 1 week. And now if they come out next week and they look exactly the same, they might fall out the top 10. But for the simple fact that I don't want to overreact to week 1, they're still in the top 5, just barely in the top 5. Cincinnati, I still have them as my Super Bowl favorite. Please don't make me look stupid. At my number 4 spot, this is another team like Jacksonville, where there was questions raised about my hype for them and my predictions for them. But they are coming. They showed out in week 1. The Miami Dolphins, where I talked about how their team was going to be back and better than ever offensively. If Tua was there, he's a top 10 quarterback in the league, in my opinion. Tua leading the charge with Tyree, Jalen Waddle, and all the players they have. And that was an injured offense. They had two running backs in that offense that weren't there. So they were missing some key pieces in their offense, and they still came out and they showed out. So they had a revamped offense with Mike McDaniel. On defense, you have Jalen Phillips, Bradley Chubb, Jalen Ramsey's not even playing, and they still looked good. And that's all led by Vic Fangio. So I talked about how revamped this team was this all off season, and I had high hopes for them. I think they win their division this year. I think they will be a playoff team that wins a game or two. Miami, to me, I have a lot of expectations for them this year, and they showed out. So I moved them up 1 spot to my number 4 team in the NFL. But let me tell you, they were very, very close to being a top 3 ball club in the NFL. But at number 3, despite the loss at home, I'm going to have the Chiefs remain at number 3. And I get it. They lost, they lost their home opener, right, to the Detroit Lions, who haven't really won anything since the 90s. But they were missing Chris Jones. They were missing Travis Kelce. And I don't want to sound like Chris Collinsworth defending Mahomes and defending the Chiefs. But the Chiefs, I mean, any team in the NFL, really, regardless of Pat Mahomes, if you're missing your second and third best player, it's going to be very hard to win games. And this Chiefs team was still in the game throughout the entirety. So the Chiefs, for me, will stay at number 3, just like the Bengals. If they come out next week and they look the same or they look worse, they might fall out the top 5. But this is the luxury you get when you win 3 Super Bowls, or you won 2 Super Bowls in the last 4 years. You get a little extra help here in these rankings, at least in my opinion, because it's kind of hard to knock a juggernaut, if that makes sense. But for me, the Chiefs, number 3, because they didn't have their second and third best players. They should have them back starting next week, and we should get a real view of how this team plays in 2023. At my number 2 spot, another team that's going to stay the same, but we're going to go with the Philadelphia Eagles, just like the Jacksonville Jaguars. They did what they needed to do. They went into Foxborough to play New England on Tom Brady's ceremonial night, and they took care of business. They won that ball game. However, that fourth quarter alone is the reason that they are not the number 1 team in ball, as they did 2 failed fourth down attempts late in that fourth quarter that gave the Patriots the ball back with a chance to win the game twice in like the last 10 minutes of the game. The Eagles did not want to win that game, and they still managed to. So I don't know if that says just how good the Eagles defense is or just how bad the New England offense is. Regardless, the Eagles, to me, they showed a lot of promise in the first 3.5 quarters. They looked like the team they were last year, if not better, is a way to put it. But that fourth quarter alone, just with the playmaking and the play calling decisions, it was so questionable. And it made me worry a little bit about this team going forward, if that's how, I guess, stupid they will be, if you mind, with their play calling decisions. But the Eagles, to me, number 2 team, did exactly what they needed to do. Just some questionable moves down the stretch there in that game at Foxborough. But shout out to Tom Brady, the greatest player of all time. He deserves his flowers, and he deserves a statue. I mean, if not 1, 2, in front of that New England stadium. But at my number 1 team, I have the San Francisco 49ers. They move up 3 spots in my rankings. They won 30-7 in Week 1 at Pittsburgh. And that is my worst prediction from Week 1. And I'll come out and I'll admit to it. I said Pittsburgh was going to win Week 1, and we were going to start having questions about the quarterback situation in San Fran. I felt like it was written right in front of us. As, they just traded away Trey Lance. Now they lose Week 1 on the road in Pittsburgh. Is Brock Purdy the guy? Did they make the right decision? I was looking more so from a media aspect than just a general football aspect, I guess. And San Fran made me look stupid, as Brandon Ayuk alone outscored the Pittsburgh Steelers. Brock Purdy looks like their guy. He runs that system better than I've seen anybody in the last couple of years. And maybe since RG3 is a good way to put it. But, I mean, Brock Purdy is their guy going forward. Deebo Samuel, he was outshined by Brandon Ayuk, but he still had a pretty good game. The defense of this 49ers team is maybe the best defense in the NFL. And I say that even with the Cowboys shutting out the Giants 40-0 and having a historical game defensively. But this unit of the San Francisco 49ers, led by the guy that just got paid $35 million a year, Nick Bosa, and Fred Warner, who that's an argument who's better, Fred Warner or Nick Bosa. Don't come at me in the comments. I think it's an actual conversation that Fred Warner might be better at football than Nick Bosa. If not, they're right behind each other, and they're still 2 of the elite players in this game. And I definitely think they're the number 1 team in ball right now, because they didn't show any flaws in Week 1. At least in my eyes, they didn't show any flaws in Week 1. But that is going to do it for our updated top 10. Next week, we're going to come back and we're going to look at these and say, man, we're stupid for keeping the Cincinnati Bengals in the top 5. They should have been outside of it. However, we're going to have to see what happens from Thursday to Monday in Week 2. But this time next week, we're going to come back with the same exact thing, update this top 10, and we're going to do that throughout the season until we get to that Super Bowl matchup. But that is my updated top 10 for the week. We've already ran through the players of the week. Now I want to run through the losers from week 1. I want to look at them, give my assessment, I guess is a way to put it. In week 1, the Kansas City Chiefs lost to the Detroit Lions. We just talked about it. My question or comment for them is just, when is Kelce going to return? That is the question. If Kelce returns, I think if Kelce played, I think this team wins that week 1 game. But now, he wasn't there and they lost. They had to rely on Blake Bell. When is he going to return? When he returns, this offense looks better, and Patrick Mahomes doesn't have to worry about Kadarius Toney dropping 3 or 4 passes. As a Gators fan, that kind of sucks to see Kadarius Toney not excelling. Kind of doesn't make sense how he catches passes from Kyle Trask, but not Patrick Mahomes. It doesn't make sense to me, but it sucks to see Kadarius Toney play the way he did. Hopefully he bounces back. It's kind of hard to play worse than that. But this offense doesn't have to rely on these backup wide receivers to make plays and to win football games. They will have the best tight end in the game, Travis Kelce, back on the field sooner, hopefully, rather than later, and they can get back to their winning ways. But that is just the overall question. When is Kelce going to return for this Chiefs offense? Moving over to the Bengals, my question for them is, was it just a fluke? And that's kind of my hope because, one, I don't want to look stupid, and with all the talent they have, it would be a shame if they just came out and had a 6-win season. Yeah, obviously that's an over-exaggeration. But the Cincinnati Bengals, to me, the question is, was it just a fluke? Was it the weather? Was it that, that the Browns just simply had your number? Was it just a fluke that you lost in the fashion that you did in week 1? To me, I think it was. Again, they're still my Super Bowl favorite moving forward. But that is the question. Was it just a fluke for the Cincinnati team? Moving over to the Los Angeles Chargers, the defense. That is, I talked about it earlier. The reason why they dropped as much as they did, despite losing the game of the year, maybe to this point, it's just the defense. They have the talent. Or I guess I'll say this: they have the star talent in Khalil Mack, Joey Bosa, and Derwin James, Asante Samuel Jr. But the overall unit just couldn't stop anything, right? So that is really the question for this team moving forward. Coming into the year, my biggest question was the coaching staff, but it seems like offensively, they're still doing pretty okay. The defense, however, is their biggest question, and they're going to have to figure that out sooner rather than later, especially in the stacked AFC conference. The Houston Texans, I think they're right on track. Despite their loss week 1, CJ Stroud arguably looked like the best rookie quarterback in week 1. I might give that edge to a quarterback we'll talk about in a bit. But they're right on track. They're not expected to win 6, 7, 8, 9 games this year. They're expected to be back in the lottery. Even though they don't have their first round pick, that's where kind of they're expected to be. It's a rebuilding year for both the coaching staff, and it's a development year for the coaching staff and the players. So they're right on track. They lost week 1. They're a young team. They should bounce back here eventually. But I can't see them winning more than 5-6 games in 2023. Before we continue on to the rest of the list, I want to shout out today's sponsor, Life by Laura. This is a company that reached out to me 2 months ago at this point, and I said, hey, do you want a custom tumbler? I said, sure. So they sent me out a custom tumbler with my logo on it. If you want to see the quality and the design of it, go ahead over to my Instagram at The Anomaly Podcast. You'll see how high quality it is, as I'm super grateful they sent it out to me. But shout out to Life by Laura. Go check her out on Facebook at Life by Laura or on Instagram at Life by Laura 2023 to check out custom t-shirts, tumblers, crafts. I know she has some Halloween bags coming up here pretty soon. So go ahead and check her out on those accounts and maybe get in contact with her, because you can discuss past projects she's done or discuss future ideas that you guys can come to terms with and get something done that maybe she has never done. Super excited though. I'm super grateful for Life by Laura. This is month 2 now here as the sponsor of the channel. And thank you, to Life by Laura. But go ahead and check her out. You guys won't be disappointed. For Pittsburgh, we just talked about them. It's their missing offense. They put up 7 points in week 1 in a game that I said they were going to win at home to get off to a good start. But they were missing an offense in a bad way. They talked about all offseason that Kenny Pickett improved as a passer, that George Pickens was ready for that superstardom second-year leap. They said Deontay Johnson, he's back and he's better than ever. Then they come out and they look like they forgot how to play football for an entire calendar year. 30-7, granted, it was maybe against the best defensive unit in the NFL in the Niners, but they just looked terrible. And for an improved offensive unit, supposedly, they didn't show that. And Pittsburgh, for good reason, is a loser in week 1. The Indianapolis Colts, Anthony Richardson is him. He is the guy for this team moving forward. And I'm again, it's only week 1. I don't want to overestimate in week 1. But Anthony Richardson, to me, was the most impressive rookie quarterback in week 1. And as a Gators fan, I'm hoping this guy is the next Cam Newton, as this guy just reminds me so much of him when you watch him on the football field. With the QB runs, with just he's big, his stature, just with everything about Anthony Richardson reminds me of Cam Newton. And man, I really hope he turns into Cam Newton, as both of them, at the end of the day, went to Florida. Of course, Cam Newton had his success elsewhere, but he ultimately was a Florida quarterback. Now, moving over to Tennessee, quarterback questions are starting early, as Ryan Tannehill had 3 interceptions in week 1. We know that they have 2 quarterbacks, warming up, whether if it's Malik Willis or Will Levis. This team has 2 young quarterbacks behind the veteran, and again, it's only week 1. I'm going to say that a lot here, but Ryan Tannehill did look horrible in week 1, despite having an improved wide receiver core. They didn't even use Chigo Okonkwo, which is a guy I think that's like a mini David Njoku. They refused to use him, and they didn't even really target him, which we'll talk about tomorrow on our fantasy episode. Quick plug. But this offense just didn't look the greatest. Hopkins statistically had a pretty okay day. Same with Derrick Henry. Tajay Spears showed a lot of promise. But this is a team that's going to have the same questions that they've had the last couple of years. Can they find the guy at quarterback? And Ryan Tannehill, to me, serviceable guy. He's a game manager, but man, did he look horrible in week 1. And I think if he comes out next week and has a game like that, these questions are going to start to stir the pot. Who is the right guy to move them forward and to win them games? Maybe it's Tannehill. Maybe they just ride with the veteran this year. Or maybe we see a rookie step in here sooner than we all originally thought. Moving over to the Denver Broncos, they were just okay at best. I'm a big fan of Sean Payton. I watched him single-handedly revive Drew Brees' career, and Drew Brees was, a Hall of Fame quarterback, my favorite player of all time. I mean, I have a bobblehead and a signed football from Drew Brees behind me. That's how much I love Drew Brees. But this is a guy that, in Sean Payton, I'll say this, he is getting back into football. It's his first job since the New Orleans Saints stint. And he has Russell Wilson. He's trying to revive this career of Russell Wilson that is a Hall of Fame level career. And, they did okay. He definitely looked more confident, I'll say that, than he did with Nathaniel Hackett. But this offense was missing some pieces with Jerry Jeudy out, with, of course, KJ Hamler. He took time away from football, and Tim Patrick going down to injury, unfortunately. This team was missing some pieces, but just offensively and defensively, they didn't look great. And they lost to a team that I think is terrible in the Las Vegas Raiders. So the Denver Broncos, to me, I have higher hopes for them this year. But after all, they just looked okay in week 1. And I want to see some improvement, especially as we see guys like Jerry Jeudy return to football. In the AFC East, we have the New England Patriots. Mac is back. I could have went with the Mac attack. I could have went with Mac is back. Regardless, you get the picture. I think Mac Jones looked like his rookie self, again, as a rookie after replacing Tom Brady. Mac Jones led this New England team to a 10-win season. He was a Pro Bowler, and he really looked like their guy moving forward. Last year, of course, he took a step back, but it looks like he's back to his rookie version, and he looked a lot more aggressive and a lot more confident with Bill O'Brien calling the plays instead of Matt Patricia. But this offense, from Kendrick Bourne to, Ramondre Stevenson in the fourth quarter, this offense did look good. I mean, Zeke, you could tell it was sad because you could tell he took a step back because of his age. But this offense, just as a unit, looked more confident. They looked more aggressive. And they did have 2 chances late in that game to win against the Eagles. They couldn't get it done. But again, the Eagles might have a top 5, top 3 defensive unit in the league. But Mac is definitely back, and it looks like he is their guy moving forward. So shout out to Bill Belichick and Bill O'Brien and the rest of this New England staff for making that decision early in the preseason, or I guess late in the preseason. Regardless, the Buffalo Bills, I have the wrong thing here for it, and I'm going to tell you what I should have said. I should have said, quit joshing around. I'm sorry for the pun, but Josh Allen, his turnover problems we know have been an issue over the last 5 years. I saw a stat last night before the game that he's had 80 turnovers in the last 5 years, which was tied with Jared Goff for the most in the NFL. That's insane. We know the dynamic that Josh Allen is. We know he's a top 3 quarterback, maybe even player in the NFL. But with his turnover problems that yet again cost them the game last night to a team that had Zach Wilson, who Zach Wilson didn't necessarily show out. He did make some some good throws. He looked a lot more mature, but he didn't necessarily win the Jets the game. I think Josh Allen lost the Bills the game more so than the Jets won it. And it's just to that point where I had them as a borderline top 10 team. I got questions for it. And I think the rest of the world is catching on. I don't believe in this Bills team as much as other people have. I didn't last year. I don't this year. This Bills team to me is just like the Cowboys. They are the AFC Cowboys. They're going to get to the playoffs, might win a game or two, but they're never going to be good enough to get over that hump. And this is a team that I've been saying for a couple months now they should be in the market for a Cooper Kupp. They should be in the market for a Terry McLaurin. Just another offensive weapon that could open up this offense. So if Stephon Diggs is shut down, this team doesn't have to rely on Deontay Hardy and Gabe Davis, who shows up once a month. This is a team that needs another piece offensively. Of course, they're missing Von Miller as well, but just quit joshing around. Take care of the football in the future, win these games, and change my mind to be a legitimate Super Bowl contender in not only my eyes, but the general public. For the Seattle Seahawks, WTF, what happened in that Week 1 game? You're playing a team that doesn't have Cooper Kupp. You're playing a quarterback that was contemplating retirement because of a spinal surgery that he set off to the side. You're playing an old Aaron Donald that might be in his retirement run. What happened in Week 1? I mean, you were a team that made the playoffs last year. You came into this team and you came into this year and you're saying we have an improved defense. Our defense is on top of the world. We look better than ever. And then you come out and you play like that. I mean, you let up 30 points to a Rams team that was missing their best option offensively. And it's not like the Chiefs, not like the Chiefs. The Rams don't have much outside of Cooper Kupp. I mean, they have Tyler Higbee as their next best option, or, maybe Tutu Atwell or Puka Akuna. They don't have much offensively outside of Cooper Kupp. So you're playing a depleted offense already, and then you still give up 30 points. And this is a defense that you said was improved over the offseason. A lot of questions for Seattle. I'm definitely starting to panic about them this year, but I still think they can bounce back. They have plenty of time. Again, it's only Week 1 to get back on the right foot to maybe be that 9-10 win team I thought they could be this year. Chicago, we're waiting on Justin Fields' development. That's simply put, we came to this year knowing he had to improve passing the ball down the field, especially in the accuracy department, and he struggled with that yet again Week 1. The Packers have a veteran group defensively. They are very solid on that side of the ball, very well coached. But, it's no excuse. I mean, when you're just blatantly missing open throws and you're just not making the reads that you should be making as an NFL quarterback, that's going to hold your team back from winning at the highest level. And it's the same questions as last year. We're just waiting on his passing development. And if we don't see it this year, maybe that's just what Justin Fields is going to be for his NFL career. However, Justin Fields, hopefully he can get back on track as he was an elite passer at OSU. And in the NFL, he just hasn't found that yet. Moving over to the Minnesota Vikings, they just ran out of luck. Last year in one-score games, they were 11-0, an NFL record. This year, in one-score games, they are 0-1, of course. But they lost to a Baker Mayfield team. I said that could have been an upset game, but I rolled with the Minnesota Vikings because they have Jordan Addison. They have Justin Jefferson, Kirk Cousins, TJ Hawkinson. This team has the talent on both sides of the ball, even Byron Murphy, Daniel Hunter. I rolled with the team because they were home and they have the talent to still get the job done because this is a team that won 12-13 games last year. However, they ran out of luck. They should get back on track, just not in week 2. Week 2, they have a very tough matchup against Philly. You have to wonder how that will affect the confidence of this team moving forward. The New York Giants, a short-term memory. That is my, I'm not a Giants fan. I don't even care for New York sports in general. However, the Giants, you have to have short-term memory. Be a professional. You lost 40-0. Who cares? It's only week 1. You have 17 games left. 16 games left. 17 weeks to close out this season. I mean, if you're 8-1 at the midseason mark, no one is going to remember this 40-0 loss. At least, unless you're a Cowboys fan. No one's going to remember this loss at the end of the day. So go out there, have short-term memory, be a professional, and get back on track, because the way you paid this quarterback, you're going to have to win some ball games with the way that you paid this quarterback. But you also have to start winning divisional games. And that's another thing, as in week 18 of last year, or 17, they lost 38-7 to the Eagles. And then this year they lose 40-0 to the Cowboys. So it's not just that they're losing to these divisional opponents, but they're getting blown out. And you have to fix that if you want to win at the highest level. The Arizona Cardinals, good acting. Yeah, good acting. Give them a round of applause, right? They had Joshua Dobbs. They got off to a good start. They had at one point a 2-score lead over the Commanders, and it looked like they were going to win the game. But then they crumbled at the end, and they said, hey, we kind of like that Caleb Williams kid out of USC. So good acting on their part. I think, if anything, they deserve a red carpet for the Arizona Cardinals. But they're on track as well. Just like the Houston Texans, they're on track. They're going to have, this year they're going to be looking for some development in their younger stars. Maybe some guys you didn't look at to be relevant. Maybe they can come out and make an effort and have an effort on this team and solidify a spot for next season when this team is kind of in a position more so ready to go than this year. But for the Arizona Cardinals, good acting, definitely should be in Hollywood. And to close off this list, we have the Carolina Panthers, who lost their Week 1 game to the Atlanta Falcons in a very weird matchup there. But the pun for this team is that Bryce is Young. Of course, Bryce Young, first pick out of Alabama. He was drafted to turn this franchise around, kind of be the next Cam Newton for this team. However, he just looked indecisive. He wasn't as quick with his decision making as he was at Alabama, which was one of his pros coming out of college, was that he was very smart, ahead of his time. However, Bryce Young, he just looked young. He looked like he was in his NFL debut. He had a couple interceptions, and he just didn't look the greatest, especially as a rookie. However, Bryce, he's going to need time. And just like any other young quarterback, it's too early to judge him. However, he did show flashes, and I think that is a good sign moving forward for the Carolina Panthers. This is just not a year I think you compete for a playoff spot, but maybe others can sway your opinion. But that is going to do it for today's show, as episode 95 in the books. Of course, we're approaching episode 100, and again, it is the 11th month anniversary of this channel. I couldn't be more grateful for all the support that we've had over these last 11 months. That is 4 videos a week for 6 of those months, and we've come a long way from the production to we had a co-host at one point in time, so keep your eyes out on Thursday. But we've come a long way with this podcast. My goal for this first year was to hit 500 subs on the channel. We're already past that. We're on the road to 1,000, and that is just truly astonishing. I'm not trying to get all literature, but that is really amazing that we've gotten to this point. So I want to thank you guys for all the support, as I kind of just started this out of the blue. Now I think we can actually make something out of it. It is 11 months in. Of course, we still have 1 month until that 1 year. And of course, you see, we are approaching 100 episodes. So a lot of special things are coming for this channel. And I couldn't be more grateful to do this 4 days a week for you guys. And we'll be back tomorrow. Back tomorrow with some fantasy football content. We have some week 2 waivers, some week 1 MVPs for fantasy football, and much more. So go ahead and check that out tomorrow. Of course, we're dropping it at 1 o'clock Eastern. But until then, peace, love, and hugs. I'll see you guys tomorrow for fantasy football. Stay happy. Stay healthy. We're out.